See if I can pull off a miracle here. A last-second miracle, everybody. Let's see what we got. All right. Try this right here. Hello, 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 hello. Let's see who we've got in his house. Let's get this chat set up. Cobalt, how you doing? What's up, what's up, what's up? Okay. The sound's just a little goofy right now because the microphone's a little farther away from my face than I anticipated. I have to try to figure out how to get my lower third set up. We got it. Now, if you are not a regular listener and you just want to hear the story, which is Slay Season 3, Episode 1, just forward to that to 0 right there, and you will be good to go. That's when we start the story time. And otherwise, you want to hear me blab with everybody, I'd love it. I'd love to have you hang out. Remember, we do these live every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, at twitch.com/ScottSigler, youtube.com/ScottSigler, facebook.com/ScottSigler. It's all over the place. It's insane the amount of production that we have here. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope you guys had a great New Year's Eve, and I hope your first day of the new year is good. Sigler in place. Art bin. Lower. Oops. Poop. Anybody do anything fun for New Year's Eve? A and I might have over-imbibed a little bit. This morning was a little bit rough. I'm not going to lie to you. It's like 2 lower thirds, see if this works, and that doesn't work. All right, that's all right. Can't win, can't win. All right, we're not going to pull this off. This is not going to happen. No problemo. Get that out of the way, get this up here, and say hello to everybody. How we doing? I forgot there's all kinds of stuff I need to do to ramp up for a new podcast novel, and I forgot to do a bunch of that, so A and I were scrambling a little bit. Once again, if you're new here, if you just got here, you just want to hear the story, go ahead and fast forward to quadruple zeros, and we're good to go. And that's when the story will start. Once again, let's see who's in the house. Cobalt, Sean, John Bivens. John Bivens, no scotch for me today, buddy. Thank you for that cheers, though, but no. Steve Ricky Berg, Cobalt. Let's see who got Chris Grallnhouse. Happy New Year, sir. D79. Tony Vanieri. Glad you made it back on time, too. A. Sigler in the house. Brian Kane, buddy. I hope you're doing well. Terry Davis. How you guys doing out there? Good to see everyone. Why? Let's see. I got to reboot this now. It did not hurt that I literally slept most of the day away, you guys. FDO's tolerance is not what it used to be, my friends. Not what it used to be. Edward Rocco in the house. What's up, buddy? Yes, A has been babysitting me today because however many scotches I had last night, they were too many scotches. Got to get everything reconfigured. Nose a little stuffed up. I'm a mess, you guys. Total mess. All right, we got 6 minutes. Let's go into, we'll go ahead and switch housekeeping to after. We don't have, hey, Scott Aiken, how you doing? People are filtering in right now. Got to give them a couple minutes so we can give them the good info. Episode 1 of Slay Season 3. We basically, once we hit the halfway point in this season, we're halfway through the series. And Rob and I and A are pumped to bring this to you. I think it's a pretty fun episode. It's a rocker. I don't really have a story so far for you this time, so we're going to dive right into it. And Slay, the third time's a charm. A lot of things I missed this morning. Caught up on most of them, but not everything. Ian Sekel, how you doing, buddy? People are definitely filtering in now. Possibly I'm not the only one who is hungover. I'm not sure. Anybody else over imbibe last night? Now, a man of my age and my experience should absolutely fucking know better. I should know better. I should know how much is too much, how much is not enough. Ian, I also can't believe Slay 3 is happening already. And now while I'm sure Rob and I will have, some difficult writing times in this, even though we know everything's going, the individual episodes are sometimes a challenge, especially when we have to thread in seasons 1, 2, and set up seasons 4 and 5. This is one big, long arc. But episode 1 just flew from the fingertips. Absolutely fantastic. I'm pumped. It went good. Rob liked it. A real girl herself has not heard it yet. So if you hear any laughter filtering into the microphone because she didn't know what was coming, then that is a good thing. Brian Kane in the chat room says, what better way to start the new year? Oop, got to get rid of that. That's from last time. I don't know what that frame. Boop. No, that's not it. Movie. Boop. There we go. And there's our countdown timer. Brian Kane says, what better way to start the new year than with the Siglers and Slay 3? I could not agree more, sir. Chris Grawl says, I rarely get hangovers. Must be my Irish genes. Scott Aiken, super excited. Excellent. Ian, at one point I felt I knew I had just the right amount of bourbon. Then we get to the last story in 4 Rooms, the movie Ian and I watched last night. And, it's Bruce Willis and Quentin Tarantino just pounding champagne. And I'm like, I just have one more scotch. I just have one more scotch. Everything's going to be fine. Turns out everything was not fine. It is so easy to overshoot the line, especially when I'm hanging out with A, because it's just my favorite thing to do. And I get all happy and giddy. And Rob Otto, who has hung out with me for the majority of my life, knows what this is like. When the FDO gets pumped up because he's around people that he just adores, sometimes the rational self-control goes out the window and is replaced by this sound. Whee! Whee! And I'm having a good time. It's like riding a roller coaster. Steve Ricky Burke says, I ran out of scotch, which might have, quote, helped, unquote, me. Yeah, well, that would have been good for me. I slept literally the whole goddamn day, you guys. I got up, gave it a shot in the morning, gave it the good old college try, and A made me some breakfast, and then I'm like, I can't even function. I'm going back to bed. Go back to bed, slept till 1:30. I cannot remember a time I have slept that late, like since college. That's how out of commission I was. So, but I'm back. Look at me. Look at the energy. Ready to go. Fuzz Bubbles. I've missed a few weeks. Are we back to Slay? Should I catch up first? Fuzz Bubbles. No, you don't need to catch up because this is episode 1 of Slay season 3. You can start right here. As long as you finished Slay season 2, you're not gonna miss anything. In fact, you don't even need to listen to that. If you didn't finish it, this episode is totally fine. But after this episode, get your ass in gear and make sure you get through Slay 1 and 2. I also would not recommend, I wouldn't be, let me find a way to say this. If you've got the time, I would recommend going back and mainlining Slay season 1 and 2, the podcast, and then roll right into season 3. And of course, you can be doing that as you're listening to season 3. It's a lot of content to listen to. Somebody online asked me today when the Slay 2 audiobook will be on Audible. I don't know. A and I are working on that. We have the print versions of Slay book 1 coming up in the near future. We're QCing those, making sure everything works out well. And then we will move on to QCing. Pardon me, I got the gas. Then we'll move on to editing Slay 2, getting that ready for ebook and print. And then we will do the audiobook for Slay 2. And hopefully all of those things will hit at once. Recluse Mage. Oh my God. Yeah, I'm glad you're excited for season 3. It's really going to be fun. Hope you guys really dig it. What else? But yeah, so by the time Slay season 3 comes to an end, we're expecting to have Slay 1, 2, and 3 available in print, ebook, and audiobook. This should take about 4 months, I think. I don't know. Rob and I haven't mapped out. We've mapped out the episodes, but episode count can fluctuate. This is episode, what did I say? 77. Did I get that right? Hold on here. Yes, correct. Look at me. Woo! I'm on fire. All right, let's get ready to rumble. Kevin Mast in the house. Hey, Happy New Year, my man. Still gotta work my way out to a hangout with Grawl and Mest at some point. That would be awesome. Got a little present here from Chris McWhite. It's very nice. Well, let me get you in the bigger picture. Boop. Look at you publishing books and shit. Thank you, Chris McWhite. Appreciate that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to get into it. Here we go. Recording, check, check. And that looks good. Let's get our script up. I'm going to move you guys' silly chat off to my other monitor so you don't distract me. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Find my script. Slay, Season 3, Episode 1, entitled French Kiss. Room 712. Benson's face felt hot. Was this really happening? Should he be doing this? He'd met April at the hotel bar. She was the hottest thing he had ever seen. Ever. Strawberry blonde hair so thick you could surf on it. Blue-green eyes. He'd always had a thing for blue-green eyes, but rarely saw them in person. And when he did, they were either the eyes of a woman who didn't want him or a woman he didn't want. But this divine creature, she was everything he wanted. He hadn't noticed her at first. He'd walked into the bar, sat down, ordered a drink. A gleam from her necklace caught his eye, a split-second rainbow flash of colors he knew and colors he didn't. He'd looked at her then, and it had taken all of his will to look away, to not stare. Of course, he hadn't approached her. She was way out of his league. Way out. He'd sat there at the hotel bar, drinking Jack and Cokes. She'd had a table to herself, reading a book, looking as good gets. Gray jacket, matching skirt. Tweed, maybe, although Benson wasn't sure if that was the word for it. Herringbone, maybe? Thick black belt, black fishnet stockings on long legs. Legs that were crossed just so. She had a martini, looked like. She'd caught him staring. He'd hurriedly looked away, but not before he saw her smile. Moments later, he heard her heels clacking toward him. She slid onto the stool next to his, laid her book atop the bar. "Hi, handsome," she said. "Someone must have shot you with a phaser set on stunning." Benson blinked. Benson stared. She was flawless. She was smiling. And had she used a Star Trek line on him? He loved Star Trek. No way a woman this hot knew Star Trek. "If you're a true fan," he said, "what's your favorite series?" He cringed inside. Had he just challenged her sci-fi cred? But she smiled wider. Her eyes gleamed. Her necklace glinted again, and he realized it was a Starfleet pendant set with a thick diamond in its center. Oh, for fuck's sake. She was the real deal, and he had insulted her. "I'm partial to TOS Season 3, but ENT's full run is right up there. And before you ask, BOBW is my overall favorite episode." TOS, the original series. ENT, Star Trek Enterprise. And she knew the episode The Best of Both Worlds from Star Trek Strange New Worlds. "Oh," Benson said. I'm sorry I asked you the way I did." "Don't be. I don't like fake geek girls either. Stupid posers. Am I right?" She picked up her book. Carl's Doomsday Scenario by Matt Denneman. No way. That was Benson's favorite series. She pulled her bookmark from the pages. It was a hotel room key. She set it on the bar. You might be interested to know I packed my Lieutenant Uhura costume, she said. Nichelle Nichols era. The red, not the gold. I'm going to go put it on. Why don't you wait 10 minutes, then beam yourself up to room 712? She'd left. He'd started a timer on his watch. 10 minutes. Exactly 10 minutes. He'd waited, mostly staring at the bar top, afraid if he saw something, it might distract him from this dream, might wake him up when he did not want to be awake. When the timer hit zeros, he'd sprinted for the elevator. And now here he was, at her door. Benson knocked. The door opened. There she stood, in Uhura's red mini dress. Strawberry blonde hair in a bun. Heavy red lipstick. Black stockings, black boots with 6-inch heels. Those aren't regulation boots, Benson said. He briefly thought about punching himself in the face, but her grin chased the thought away. I guess I need to be reprimanded, she said. Come in. He stepped in, looking her up and down, knowing it was pervy to do so, but unable to stop himself. She was perfect. She shut the door, took his hand, led him into the room. Not a suite, but not far from it. She, or her company more likely, wasn't hurting for money. King-size bed with 2 nightstands. Cushy chair. Big window with half-drawn yellow curtains showing the black night outside. Flat panel TV on a dresser. Small desk with a mirror on the wall behind it. Her hand felt warm. Felt hot. Like he felt inside. So, Captain, are you married? His eyes flicked to his left hand, to the ring on his finger. Should he be doing this? No, he shouldn't. Yes, he said. I am married. She put a fingertip to his lips. I won't tell if you won't. He needed to leave. He couldn't leave. She took both of his hands, placed them on her hips. Her hands linked behind his neck, pulled him down, pulled him closer. Kiss me, Captain. Kiss me. He did. Her lips fired an electric chill through him, tingling his spine, sparkling his skin. Her tongue found his. Heat coursed through him, from toes to scalp. The way her body fit against his, the smell of her hair, like cherries with vanilla. She leaned back. I won't tell if you won't. Her lips were so close, the air of her words sent warmth into his open mouth. He wanted her. He'd never wanted anything as much as he wanted her. He kissed her again, drawing her into him. Her fingers gripped the back of his head, squeezed on the back of his neck. A stinging sensation, like the bite of a mosquito. Benson moved to slap at his neck, but his arm didn't respond. He tried again. Nothing. He couldn't move. She leaned her head back, still smiling, but a different smile now, a smile of control. A smile of evil. And you won't tell, she said. You wanted to fuck me? I'm going to fuck you, Captain, and then I'm going to gobble you right up. A knock at the door. Room service! A man's voice. Thick Mexican accent. Her face wavered for a second, wiggled, like something lurked beneath her skin, and then it was gone. I didn't order room service. A pause. Benson tried to scream for help, but his lips barely responded. His throat, not at all. No sound escaped his mouth. Yes, you did, said the voice outside the door. No, I didn't, April said. See, you did. She sneered. Her teeth, stubby and triangular, not normal human teeth. No, I did not, she said. Now fuck off, pendejo, before I call immigration. Comprende? A pause. Benson couldn't move. Couldn't move. What was she going to do to him? Knock, knock, knock. No comprende, señora. Nachos and tacos, room service. Muy grande. The woman released him. Benson crumbled onto the bed, facing the TV. He could still see her as she walked to the door with furious strides. What an ass she had. No, can't think that. She was going to eat him. She'd said so. The woman in the red Star Trek costume and the 6-inch pump boots reached for the door, then stopped, her hand hovering inches from the knob. Benson heard her sniff. Knock, knock, knock. Room service! Enchilada, tortilla, cholula, muy delicioso! The woman turned, her hard eyes fixed on Benson. She touched her hip, pantomime drawing a knife, only it wasn't a pantomime. She held a foot-long blade, a strange color, a dull yellow tan. Bronze. She held a bronze knife. Knock, knock, knock. Señora, señorita, pretty lady, room service! Her face wavered again, like snakes slithered beneath it. She strode toward Benson. Something black smashed through the window, flaring the curtains inward, sending chunks of glass scattering toward the woman who raised her knife hand to shield her face from the glittering shower. A mad, blurred flapping of long black wings. A big bird settled on top of the TV. A raven. Slipped him a Mickey, slipped him a Mickey, the raven said. That's your ass, that's your ass. Something else crashed through the window. Something much bigger. Something gray, without form, landed on the hotel room floor. A man, kneeling. A man in a cloak of gray, so gray it was almost black, but not quite. Fabric so dense it ate the room's light. Oh, shit, the woman said. Slowly, dramatically, the man stood, the ragged cloak's edge sliding across the carpet as he did. He wore armor, dull gray, scratched, and dented, like the armor of a medieval knight, but more form-fitting, engraved with hundreds of runes and pictograms. And his eyes, hidden by wafting, curling black mist, wavering devil horns of onyx smoke. Hello, Meredith, he said. Didn't I tell you to get the fuck out of town? I was just leaving, Meredith said. I swear, just getting some sleep for the trip is all. I had hotel points. Use 'em or lose 'em, you know? Collecting a bounty was more fun when the mark wasn't so damn stupid. The businessman lying limp on the bed was still blinking, so he was still alive. Good thing. The Lumencia Leopards football game had ended earlier than Lincoln expected, thickening the city's traffic. He'd got here just in time. Lincoln gestured to the man. And this guy? Meredith shrugged. A snack for the road. A girl's got to eat, right? This was what Lincoln got for being nice. He held out his hand, palm up. Give me the pendant, Meredith. She covered it with her hand. Lincoln had to admit she cleaned up real nice. No wonder this Gomer had been drawn in. Linc, I can hear your boner getting hard from here. Magda's voice in his head. Stay on target. She was back at the old stone church, safe and sound, using the golden ear cuff Linc had taken from the lich in Lynchburg. Magda could see what Lincoln saw, could hear what Lincoln heard. and speak directly into his head. You can't hear a boner, Lincoln said. I don't even have a boner. Which was a lie. Meredith did look lights out. But those boots, they weren't regulation. Meredith glanced at Lincoln's crotch, then back up again. You excited to see me, big fella? She smiled. We can work something out. Damn it. He had to remember he was the only one who heard Magda. Hard pass, Lincoln said. I know what you really look like. The pendant. Give it. Meredith shook her head. No way. It's mine. You didn't ask for it last time. Because there wasn't a reward for it last time, Lincoln said. It popped up in Baphomet's binder this morning. See? If you'd have listened to me and got your slimy ass back to the patchwork, I wouldn't be taking the pendant now. He wiggled his fingers inward. Give it up. She glanced at the bronze knife in her hand, probably thinking about using it. Her funeral. So dumb. She didn't know Lincoln was taking the blade, too. Ariella wanted it. What Ariella wanted, Lincoln got. Drop that blade or use it, Lincoln said. Knock, knock, knock. Room service! God damn, that kid was annoying. Shut the hell up, Lincoln called out. I got things under control. A pause. Enchilada, Billy said. Tortilla! How fucking embarrassing. When they got back to the old stone church, Lincoln was going to have a word with him. Time to finish this. Lincoln flipped his cloak to the side, showing his holstered Kel-Tec pistol. Last warning, Meredith, he said. Pendant and blade. Now, or you don't walk out of here. She shook her head slowly, seductively. The pendant is mine, she said. With it, I can be your wildest dream, Lincoln. I can be what you've always wanted. On her arms and legs, on her face, skin violently shifted like crisscross storm waves. The pendant flashed, a multicolored laser sparking and stuttering. And then there stood Amanda, his wife. The same mahogany eyes that caught him the first time they met, caught him and never let go. Her long, dark hair, curls flaring with hints of amber when the light hit them just the right way. And her smile, her soft, loving smile that teased the corners of her eyes, that made her tawny skin seem to iridesce with the warmth of the sun. Amanda. Shitbird rustled his wings. Face like a gash, face like a gash, kill the bitch, and give me a fucking cracker. Amanda snarled, her face shifting and warping. I am beautiful. No, not Amanda. Meredith, her fingers flexing on the blade's handle. I am beautiful. She lunged for Shitbird, slashing toward him with the bronze blade. Lincoln drew and fired 3 rounds before she closed the short distance. The first bullet hit a finger, loosening her grip on the bronze blade. The second knocked the blade from her hand. The third sent it whipping across the room. The tip dug into the hotel room's door. The handle bobbled up and down. You asshole! Meredith clutched her wounded hand. Green fluid dripped down to the carpet, where her severed finger wiggled and writhed like an earthworm snipped in half. The pendant is mine! It's mine! She rushed him. Lincoln fired thrice more, hitting her dead center in the chest. She fell face first, landed at his feet. Even monsters have hearts. Well, some monsters have hearts. She was one of those. Lincoln had one too, and his suddenly ached with longing for his dead wife. Knock, knock, knock. Room service! It's getting loud in here! Goddamn Billy in that horrible accent. What was he thinking? Shitbird, Lincoln said. Let him in. The big crow flapped to the door as Lincoln slid a toe under Meredith's shoulder and flipped her onto her back. A dark spot left of her sternum, 3 circles merged together like a clover. Nice grouping. Shitbird pushed down the handle. Billy rolled in a food cart draped with a white cloth, a plate with a metal lid on top. He shut the door behind him. I heard you out there, Lincoln said. What was that shit? Billy straightened. What are you talking about? My room service patter stalled her long enough for you to get your old fat ass up here. While Lincoln's ass was fat, it wasn't as fat as it had been 6 months ago. Non-stop hand-to-hand training with Billy burned off a lot of calories. And that kid never ran out of gas. I mean, that bullshit Mexican accent, Lincoln said. Could you be any more racist, man? He's black. He can't be racist, Magda said. But he is prejudiced as hell. What a jackass. Billy put a hand to his chest, feigning offense. Racist? Me? Sorry to break it to you, Linc. That was my Peruvian accent, and it is dead-ass accurate. Look at you, thinking every Latino is Mexican. Who's a racist now, essay? Lincoln made a mental note to give Billy a kidney punch the next time they sparred. Bengals, Lincoln said. Time to get to work. The cloth covering the cart flapped outward. Bingles the sex gnome crawled out, awkward on his stubby little legs. Or maybe it was the squeaking vinyl overalls, studded with rhinestones spelling out Big Papi on his belly, that made his motions clumsy. Not so Tiny Tim crawled out after him, like the cart was a clown car of perversion. Tim wore a red leather harness on his chest and red leather hot pants with a pink velvet codpiece that bumped against Bingle's hip. Not tonight, Tim. Papi's working, Bingle said. He looked at the dead woman on the floor. How about that, Linc? You bagged a schmegula. That pendant made her smoking hot. I mean, she looks like she'd get her gooch worn out at a Comic-Con gangbang. I mean, that's one red shirt who isn't dying on the away mission unless it's from the clap. I mean, she's... Bingle, shut up, Lincoln said. You bring your cleaning stuff? Bingles rubbed his belly. His black vinyl gloves squeaked against the overalls like sneakers on a gym floor. Did I bring my stuff? Does a pigeon's butthole pucker in a power dive? He glanced at Shitbird. No offense. Shitbird flapped once, looked away, and cawed. No words. Yeah, he was offended. A little help here? Lincoln glanced at the man on the bed. The paralysis had worn off. Lincoln glanced at the man on the bed. The paralysis had worn off enough for him to speak. I got him, Billy said. The kid's hands glowed peppermint red. He burned filament without so much as a mumbled spell. Granted, he was countering a simple neurotoxin, but still, his innate power seemed to grow by the day. The businessman sat up, lurched up. What the fuck is going on? Who are you people? Who is she? What is she? And are those fucking midgets in bondage gear? Billy leaned closer to Lincoln and whispered, Midgets is racist. You better get on him. Lincoln's jaw clenched. He'd give Billy 2 kidney shots. Her name is Maradiata Sankaranian, he said. I can do that again. Her name is Maradiata Sankaranian, Lincoln said. She's a schmegula. Was a schmegula. The wide-eyed man looked at Lincoln. Schmegula? What the hell is a schmegula? In answer, Lincoln reached down, grabbed the pendant, and snapped it free. Another flash of multi-hued light. The pendant took on its original form, a small, battered gold image of a woman holding a box. The hotter-than-hell corpse on the floor shifted, sagged, expanded, morphing from a strawberry blonde woman into a bag of slimy green flesh with ropey clusters of purple-green coils where her arms had been, and a single, segmented, tapering trunk where her legs had been. She still wore the Star Trek costume, which somehow made it all even more revolting. "Oh my God," the man said. Her face. I French kissed that?" Meredith's neck was gone. Her approximation of shoulders angled to a segmented, tapered point. Where her human face had been, now sat a bumpy, slimy, red-green circle with little studs of yellow flesh all around. Inside, a ring of triangular teeth and something sort of resembling a long tongue. "They're coitus faders," Lincoln said. "She'd have mounted you and then drained your blood as she... you get the point." "That's nasty," Billy said. "And not the good kind of nasty." Not so Tiny Tim leaned closer to the body. "I bet there's still a lot of suction power in there." Bingles cuffed him on the back of the head. "Don't even think about it," Bingles said. "I'm a tolerant boss, but you know damn well I draw the line at necrophilia, even with a schmegula. Get the kit." Tim rubbed the back of his head, smiling slightly. It didn't look like he minded getting slapped. "Those little guys are so weird," Magda said. "So weird and so wrong." "Tell me about it," Lincoln said. The businessman stared at the slug woman, shook his head in dumbfounded disgust. "I French kissed that," he said. Tim pulled 2 duffel bags from under the food cart. One was open. It held 2 25-pound sacks of Morton's salt. He handed one to Bingles. "We'll have her body shrunk to the size of a can of Pringles in no time," Bingles said. "Easy work. Gotta clean the carpet, though. Sorry, Linc, but that's a 50% upcharge. And fixing that window ain't free. Capiche?" Of course, there was an upcharge. Not that it mattered. Over the last 6 months, the bounty hunting business had been a boomin'. They had cash to spare. Truckloads of it. "No problem," Lincoln said. With trembling fingers, the businessman touched his own lips. I had her tongue in my mouth. In my mouth." With piles of cash came all the accessories Lincoln needed to do his job, including something that would keep this man from thinking on this moment over and over until he killed himself or went insane. Or both. Probably both. "What's your name?" asked Lincoln. "Where you from?" "Benson," the man said. "Benson Fattori, Indianapolis." Lincoln saw the man's wedding ring. "You got a wife in Indianapolis, Benson?" Eyes shimmering with tears, the man looked at Lincoln. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah." Guy's dick had almost gotten him killed. Not exactly his fault, though. Pandora's pendant made its wearer someone's ultimate fantasy. Maybe the guy would have cheated on his wife anyway, maybe not. "Well, Benson Fattori, this is your lucky day," Lincoln said. He reached into the folds of his between cloak, to a special place that he'd kept stocked for the last 3 months, after the money really started coming in. He felt the bit of metal there, pulled it free, and held the silver 5-petal charm in front of the man's face. Lincoln heard the hiss of salt being poured in copious amounts and a sizzling sound like a second round of bacon laid on a hot pan, but he kept his eyes on the victim. "This is a forget-me-dot," Lincoln said. "It's magic. It means you're not going to remember any of this. Okay?" Gratitude washed over Benson's face. He nodded. "Yeah," he said. "Please, I want to forget. I want to forget." Lincoln gently pressed the charm against the man's forehead. "Do you love your wife, Benson?" The forget-me-dot flashed purple, melted, vanished into the man's skin. "Yeah," Benson said. "I do. She's my best friend." Amanda had been Lincoln's best friend. Still was, even though she was long dead. "You won't remember this night except for one thing," Lincoln said. You will remember that it's your duty to protect your wife, just as it's your wife's duty to protect you. You won't ever cheat on her again, and you will never let her down. Would the implanted suggestion work? Maybe. Lincoln wasn't great at the minutiae of a forget-me-not. He hoped the suggestion sank in. He hoped that this man never failed his wife the way Lincoln had failed Amanda. Benson's eyes rolled up into the back of his head. Lincoln gently laid him on the bed, turned to look at Meredith's corpse, now shriveling up like a big, slimy green raisin. The room stank like moldy socks. Billy's face wrinkled with revulsion. That's nasty, he said, and not the good kind of nasty. Lincoln couldn't argue with that. This Benson guy will be unconscious for the next hour, he said. Bingles, will you be done by then? Bingles huffed. Does the hummingbird's pecker vibrate at the speed of sound? Lincoln sighed. For once, he'd like to get a straight answer from someone. From anyone. Billy, I got to get to Callista's, Lincoln said. Can you get You can get Bingles and Tim back to the church? Billy thumped Lincoln's shoulder. Dragon's idling outside. I got it from here. Well, a straight answer. That was nice. Thanks, Lincoln said. Shitbird, let's go. Lincoln stepped to the window and pulled his cloak around him. He stepped onto the windowsill. Oops. He stepped onto the sill, the last bits of glass crunching under his boots. Descendat, he said, and stepped out into the night air. There you go, junkies. That was episode 1, season 3, episode 1 of everybody's favorite series, written by myself and that savage Rob Otto. Slay. Fantastic. That was, of course, French Kiss. I always wonder if you guys try and guess what's going to happen based on the title when we do the episode. Recluse Mage says, pretty good season starter. That's wonderful. I got the burps. Baby, I changed my mind. Go ahead and bring up a scotch. I got to celebrate. Got to celebrate. There we go. There we go. A real girl herself is going to come on up. In the meantime, let's get to the... she's going to come up. We're going to talk about separating the art from the artist. Fairly deep topic. We're going to get into it, and it's sort of a tangentially a two-parter. We'll get to that as we go. Next week, we'll talk about reconciling character choices with author decisions, a topic suggested by Sean Dyer. Housekeeping, here we go. Let's see. What's coming up for me? I'm working on Crypt Book 2's second draft. I am 50,000 words into Book 2's second draft. That's about 45% of the way through. Expecting the second draft to hit about 100,000 words. Tuesday, December 31st, Deep Cuts 31. 10 New Year's Eve movies you can enjoy to sign off 2024 went live in the podcast feed. Sunday, January 5th, Tonight's Story goes live in the podcast feed. Tuesday, January 7th, Deep Cuts 32, Separating the Art from the Artist, which you're about to listen to, goes live in the podcast feed. And then Wednesday, January 8th, Slay Season 3 continues. And then we'll talk about reconciling character choices with author decisions, suggested by Sean Dyer. If there's any Deep Cuts episodes you would like to hear, any topics you'd like to hear us talk about, go ahead and email those to info@emptyset. We will consider them and see if we can knock that shit out for you. Be sure to follow me on all the social medias. They're basically all Scott Sigler or @ScottSigler. As you can see here, we've got that's Facebook, that's TikTok, that's Threads, Instagram, Telegram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You should all be following me there. Sean Dyer says, wait, you successfully held yourself to only 100,000 words. Here's the thing, Steve. What happened is, here's what happened. Let me explain. Here's what happened. I was 135K into Slay Book 2, or excuse me, the Crypt Book 2, and it just kept getting more swole and more yoked and girthier. And then I had tried to squeeze 2 big missions into the one book. So instead, what I realized I had to do was split the 2 missions into their own individual books and then drape the horror and hanging shreds of flesh and severed muscle all about those things. So I'm really in second draft mode on both Crypt Book 1 and Crypt Book 2 and Crypt Book 3. That's a 2-3, Holmes. So we're going to be cranking out hopefully 2 Crypt books in 2025, along with hopefully GFL Book 7 and Slay Book 2's print and audiobook version. And if all goes well, Slay Book 3. We'll see. It's a big year. Thanks, Pumpkin.
I'll be right back. Keep entertaining the peoples.
Okay. After these messages, we'll be right back. Boom. Okay, let's go to chat. What did you guys think? I'm sure you may have already typed what you thought about the episode, but let me know. Throw me some chat while we're waiting for A. I'd like to know what you guys thought. I'm so excited to bring it to you. I've never done a series like this before. I get to write this series with one of my best friends in all the world, and it's so much fun. Even though this season's going to get fucking dark, like last season got super fucking dark. There's a lot of personal turmoil and dealing with trauma in this for pretty much everybody involved, particularly for Magda. And Lincoln is trying to get his shit straight. Magda is still lost down the doldrums, but we'll definitely be seeing her. Ian Sequel says, episode kicked ass. Love the small time jump. Yes, we are 6 months from the end of Slay Book 2. And Rob and I thought about starting Slay Book 3 the way we started Slay Book 2. It's like a handoff. Book 1 to 2 was right there. Trade them right off. We thought about doing that with 3, but it struck us as more powerful to let some time have passed and show the business progress. So they're kind of off the schneid. They've gotten their shit squared away. Cobalt says it's going to be a great year. Daryl Harris says the fun and horror continue. Past Euphoria, you showed up late. Don't worry about it. The episode will be in the feed in a little bit. Or go back and rewatch on YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook. It'll be right there for you. Let's get this squared away. Let's go to... Oh. Ladies and gentlemen, look who it is. It is...
Happy New Year.
The absolutely fantastic, incomparable, irreplaceable, delightful, magnificent, a real girl herself. How you doing? Good. Oh, yeah, okay. I forgot that part.
That's okay. I can hear you now.
There you are. There you are.
Do we need to fix this camera? I think probably a little.
We're looking at this camera.
Okay. Do we need to fix that camera before we begin? Or
Oh,
no?
yes, of course. Of course, darling.
There
I prefer to keep it like this so you can't really see. Oh. It's the money cam, buddy. This is the money cam. Get my mug on there. But of course, most of the time, we angle on your lovely mug. Going back through...
Hope you guys had a happy holiday season. A good New Year's. Everything good, hopefully.
God, great questions. D79 says, does Billy have a signature weapon this season? Yes, he does. Rob and I are getting to that. We've been talking about it offline. We think it's absolutely sick. It's going to be great. Scott Aiken says, so much fun are my thoughts exactly. I did get a Shorzy drop in there.
Ah, nice.
So dumb. It's delighted me. I got a Shorzy related present for Christmas that I will wear probably next week if you can help me remember.
Okay.
Rob says, we snuck in the time jump. Glad you guys caught it. Scott Aiken, just clapping. Chris McWhite, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
Thank you so much for those. We actually received them yesterday. Our friend Chris McWhite sent us these fun mugs I think Scott talked about, and I racked my brain with who could have sent them, and finally was just like, we're just going to have to put him on the show and see. And then this morning, I got a text from my friend Chris who told me it was him.
Great. That's fantastic. Let's see. Sean Dyer says, A is also hungover or just Scott? A is not hungover.
A has been busy all day.
A's got to know her limitations. She understands exactly the amount, and she doesn't really get hangovers. It's just me. I'm the dumbass.
So here's the thing. I am a person who doesn't get a ton of hangovers, and I never have had a lot of hangovers. I think I probably have had 10 or less.
Mm-hmm.
I am also a person who is because of that specific reason, many, 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 many times have overindulged. And Scott has had to.
Oops. There you go.
Thank you for overindulging. and Scott has had to essentially scrape me up off the floor. So we have finally come to an understanding where I absolutely can overdo it, and I don't have the consequence of getting a ton of hangover. So we manage that by very carefully managing me. The nice thing about that is, while he has had to scrape me up off the floor a few times because I've had too much to drink, and then I wake up pretty much okay the next day, there are very few moments like this where I get to take care of the house, walk the dogs, do all the things, and help him, which he normally helps me. I also poked my thumb and cut it last night trying to make dinner, so that's what that is, in case anybody's wondering.
Happy New Year, everybody. Cheers to all of you. We hope you are going to have a shiny 25 that is a bit shinier than your 24, and we hope your 24 was shinier than your 23. That's
Absolutely. So did you catch up on the housekeeping that you didn't
I
have
did.
before? Okay.
I did. We're
you
ready
want
to rock.
All right.
We're ready to rock. Okay. Guys, it is time. Ready? Got it? It is time for Deep Cuts. As you may know, those of you regulars, we now switch into another topic. It has nothing to do with the story you just heard, nothing to do with next week's story. So if you want to tap out, that is totally fine with us. We would love to hang out with you. We think this will be yet another interesting conversation. Ray, set that timer, doll?
I am. All righty. In 3, 2.
Oop, no, sorry. Okay, quick. Give me a check, babe.
Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2.
Ready to roll.
In 3, 2.
Happy New Year! We celebrated by watching the movie Four Rooms, which is set on New Year's Eve, released by Miramax in 1995, more than 2 decades before Happy New Year! And I celebrated the new year by watching Four Rooms, a movie set on New Year's Eve, released by Miramax in 1995, more than 2 decades before Harvey Weinstein turned out to be a horrible person.
Indeed, an absolutely terrible human being who routinely abused his powerful position in Hollywood.
And that begs the question, does Weinstein's terrible behavior taint Miramax movies? Should we still watch those movies? If we love art that came into being... No. What if we love art that came into being due to awful people? Does that make us bad? And if not, once you find out they're turd, what do you do?
It is a solid question, and it's one that's not going to go away. So we are absolutely going to discuss this right after this short break.
Okay, and then here we go. Welcome to Deep Cuts, the bonus episode of the Scott Ziegler Slices Fiction Podcast, where a sci-fi author and an audiobook narrator discuss things and stuff in the world of fiction and pop culture. I am Scott Ziegler, sci-fi horror author known far and wide as the future dark overlord.
And I am A.B. Ziegler, publisher at Empty Set Entertainment and audiobook narrator. And on this Deep Cuts, we're discussing separating the art from the artist. Now, I do want to point out, next week, we have a follow-on, which was suggested by somebody in the chat room, our friend Sean Dyer, which is separating character decisions or character things from the writer who writes them. But when we were working that up, because we kind of jaw about this before we come on Deep Cuts just a little bit, we realized we probably should have this conversation first. So we're going to start here, but come back next week for the next one.
Yep. Okay. A reminder, this is a bonus episode of the Scott Ziegler Slices podcast. Does not contain anything related to any particular tale. We'd love to have you join us, but it don't need to be here to know what's going on in the current story.
Yep. So, like we said, tonight's Deep Cuts is a hard one. It's a sort of a difficult topic, but I think it's a necessary discussion as we move forward as a society who is more and more and more online, and more information is revealed over and over and over again as we get older. I think the idea of, is it possible to separate the art from the artist, is where we should start. Do you think, top level, before we discuss, that's possible?
I don't think it's possible to completely separate the art from the artist. But if you find something incredibly moving, and as me as a creator, influential on my own work, and you love this project. I'll go with Braveheart, Mel Gibson and Braveheart. Braveheart is one of my favorite movies. It had somewhat of an influence on my career, right? And then it turns out that Mel Gibson, who starred in and directed the movie, turns out to basically be a really shitty human being.
Yeah.
And when that happens, there's this siren call to be like, cancel him. We're not going to watch anything he does. He's just so terrible. You can't support him. But I already had emotional involvement in that movie. I had already incorporated that movie into my creative thought process and absolutely loved it before we found out he was an awful person. So do I then, in retrospect, either automatically change my opinion of Braveheart, or do I have to tell myself I need to purge this project from my influences and from my life?
Sure.
Because the person who made it is not a person I want to support in any way. That's the question, right?
It is. And so I agree with this take that you have. Is it possible to separate a creator from their creation? I think the answer is 100% unequivocally yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say that is there are so many creators. I'll use Roald Dahl, who wrote Matilda, as an example. Absolutely heinous human being. But I fell in love with Matilda when I was a young wee girl. I wasn't thinking about any of that. And so my whole experience with entertainment started not with knowing anything about the person who created that, but he is without question a terrible human being. And I don't think I could, if I wanted to, give up my relationship with that. So I think some of it depends on timing and stuff like that. But we're going to talk about just a few things because, like I said at the top of this episode, I think, for all things, humans are humans. And sometimes you're terrible and sometimes you're unforgivably terrible.
Right.
And sometimes you're just terrible. So what we're going to do here is talk about a few of these things. We're going to start with Harvey Weinstein because we had a little bit of this conversation last night because we were watching Four Rooms,
Mm-hmm.
which, as Scott said, was a Miramax movie. But then we're going to take a few other examples and kind of talk about them. Please add your own in the chat room. There are already several in the chat room. Michael Jackson, things that are complicated as more information is revealed and also complicated the older we get, and our life changes too. So continue to talk about them, but we're going to talk about a handful specifically.
You're driving this bus. Let's go.
So as I mentioned, this is the idea of the creator you love essentially becoming a villain or an anti-hero. To give a little context around what I'm sort of talking about there, every human being is essentially a very complex character for the purpose of these conversations. I'm not letting anybody off the hook for their terrible behavior.
Okay.
But if you look at somebody as a character that Scott might create, there are several sides to each one of those things. And so if your hero of your story, if your protagonist is a terrible person, they might be an anti-hero. So they may still perform heroic acts, do good things. But at the end of the day, it's with deeply flawed motivations or deeply flawed history or things like that. So they end up being kind of a villain or an anti-hero. So these are the things that we're going to talk about.
Okay.
Because we are the people in the position, all of us right now, in the position of having to be the audience for those creations.
In the chat room, I just want to point this out. Recluse Mage says, Cosby, not possible to separate in my humble opinion.
Yep.
And that's another interesting aspect of this because the majority of Cosby's work is stand-up, the show and stand-up. Of course, you can never watch his stand-up again. And there was some absolutely brilliant stand-up when he was coming up and overcoming a lot of obstacles in the industry for a black man to have that kind of presence in the
100%.
entertainment space. It's super easy to turn off all the stand-up where it's just him on a mic doing his thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not as easy, in my opinion, to shut off a movie that has hundreds, if not thousands of other creators involved.
Yeah, let's talk about Harvey Weinstein because this is the perfect example of that. Does one bad actor, used in the global term actor, invalidate, say, a movie or a movie house? Harvey Weinstein was the co-founder of Miramax Entertainment, which made so many movies that I love. I venture a guess that so many movies that you love. And I'm going to name a few here because there is an interesting thing about Miramax movies, and that right out of the gate, Miramax movies kind of looked at smaller stories, smaller populations, smaller, not the majority kind of storyline, and they did it over and over and over again. Sex, Lies, and Videotape, which was one of their very early productions, which explored what I'll call alternative yet consensual sex. That was, at its time, quite rare to sort of see that in a good way. My Left Foot, which was about disabled Irish writer and painter Christy
Oh, they did
Brown.
that one too?
Yep.
God damn it.
And then here we go into the virtual cornucopia of 90s movies a lot of people love, including The Grifters, The Long Walk Home, which was about the Birmingham, Alabama bus riots and racial inequity in the United States in the 1950s. Paris is Burning, A Rage in Harlem. Madonna's Truth or Dare, which was Madonna, a powerful, wealthy woman using her sexuality as a...
That was a concert film, right?
It was a documentary, yeah, sort of a concert film documentary.
It's really, whether you like it or not, it's fucking impressive.
And today, we don't think twice about female artists kind of using their assets, including their physical assets and their sex appeal and all that stuff. But Madonna was kind of a breakthrough back in the day of doing that. And to put out a movie that is her not being apologetic for her being a woman people absolutely wanted to see in tiny outfits with pointy cone bras was very powerful back in the day. There's a bunch more. It gets so much worse. Bullet in the Head is a Hong Kong action movie that was written, directed, produced, and starring John Woo. And it was the first breakout from...
After Hard Boiled?
Yeah, for him to have so much control as all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So that was powerful then. And then, of course, we move into Reservoir Dogs, like Water for Chocolate, The Piano, Oscar winner, Pulp Fiction, Oscar winner, Clerks.
Fucking God, just some good movies.
The Postman, The Crossing Guard, which you haven't seen. If you haven't seen The Crossing Guard, the person who plays The Crossing Guard is Jack Nicholson in a very vulnerable performance. It's outstanding. Sling Blade, which was about a mentally incompetent person who is and lives around a prison system and the inequity of a prison system as well. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, Good Will Hunting, which is what Miramax, I think, will remain known for. So to Daryl Harris's point, literally tens of thousands of people paid their mortgages, still pay their mortgages by getting residuals, things like that. And this is... all those movies I listed are probably 10%, maybe 15% of what Miramax put out. And so many people's livelihoods back then, they were made by getting to participate in these movies. And to this day, many of those movies generate livable wages and livable, what are those called? When you get, is that still royalties?
Royalties, yes. Yeah. Royalties. You get residuals.
Residuals, that's what it is. To this day, so many Miramax movies absolutely provide that for many, many, many people. So it's a really interesting thing because for me personally, I will say, I'm not above judgment for my opinions, but I'm not going to put down every Miramax movie because Harvey Weinstein turned out to be a manipulative, terrible, terrible, terrible boss at Miramax and terrible human being at Miramax. Mm-hmm. Personally, I don't think so.
Yeah. Miramax is the best example because of the huge body of work, because of the fantastic pieces of art that company produced, because of the influence that company's had on the entire entertainment industry, because frankly for me, that company birthed my favorite director of all time, Quentin Tarantino. And you have to look at the bigger picture. You know, for example, if Picasso's Mona Lisa, is that right? Is it Picasso Mona Lisa, or is that somebody else?
No, Da Vinci.
Da Vinci. Let's say Da Vinci. We find out Da Vinci owned slaves, which frankly he probably did back then. That's people own slaves. Do you take down the Mona Lisa because Da Vinci was a shitty person? I don't know the answer to that, because that is one of the seminal pieces of art in human history based on its life and the reaction that's had and where it stands right now. If the singular artist makes a singular piece of work and the singular artist turns out to be a turd, do we then disenfranchise, that's the wrong word, do we then disinherit that piece of work that is part of our culture going back centuries? That's an easier decision than the movies, right? Because so many people are involved in making a movie should the guy who greenlit the movie make you not want to watch that movie anymore?
So to your hypothetical argument, I will also say this. Part of it is distance. We don't mind if Da Vinci turns out to have been a terrible human being because we don't have to live with that knowledge in a real-time way. We don't have to see Da Vinci getting spoils of his art and also be living as a terrible person even though he's a terrific artist. So that's a really good example because there are some moments where it doesn't reconcile for me. And I think one of the things that turns out to be true for me personally is it absolutely has to do with how much I am inundated with it and how much I have to live with it. There is a conversation going on in the chat room for this live stream talking about do you disinherit a sports team if you don't like a player? And I will speak personally on this. I grew up in New York Jets. Well, in 2009, I picked the New York Jets as my football team when Scott and I started to work together, and I was quite invested, and they were not a terribly winning team, and I could have picked any team in 2010 when I had to do that. But I picked the New York Jets because my brother loves them and my dad loves them, and they still do. But I also am a chemist by education, and specifically a pharmacology chemist by education. And that team is absolutely bankrolled by a heir of the Johnson & Johnson pharmaceutical wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And they hired Aaron Rodgers, an absolutely unapologetic anti-vaxxer, and I immediately burned my T-shirts. Full stop. Literally 2 days after they hired him. I'm done. Because that I cannot abide. Do I want the players on that team to have success? Yeah, they shouldn't have chosen Rodgers for that, but sure, I do. I don't blame those people. But I myself can't get back on board. I can't.
You don't want to, in our little tiny infinitesimally small way, punish the other players on that team who have worked their entire lives incredibly hard, have sacrificed, have toiled to reach that level. They get to that level, and now you're like, fuck the Jets, don't like them anymore. At the same time, we're also in this conversation in the chat room about the Cleveland Browns. Mm-hmm. At the same time, the only way to influence NFL owners or these incredibly rich people is with a collective wallet. The only way to let the NFL owners know or somebody else know, hey, we don't like the decisions you've made, is for hundreds of thousands of people to be like, we're just not paying attention to you anymore. In the larger gestalt of the sports marketplace, does that tiny protest vote mean anything? We don't know. But the Cleveland Browns signing someone who had 32 sexual assault lawsuits against him for a record sum, rewarding him despite his bad behavior. It was easy for a lot of Browns fans that I know to be like, I'm so done with this organization because they just can't. That's a good point for this topic. They can no longer give their emotional support to a franchise that would make a decision that is so diametrically opposed to their own personal morality and views.
And, morality for every single one of us, everybody listening to this, everybody you know who isn't listening to this, for every single one of us is a thing that is movable and changeable and mutable throughout our lives. And I know it doesn't necessarily feel that way sometimes, but this conversation is sort of a perfect example of, I would not choose, me personally, would not choose to watch a Mel Gibson movie moving forward. I think several things. I think he has $1 zillion and doesn't need the money. I think he's not a human being that I terribly respect. But does that mean that I am going to walk away from what it felt like for me as a sort of a kind of a fractured teenager, like every teenager is, who in college saw a movie, or just out of college saw a movie called The Man Without a Face, which isn't a great movie. Mm-hmm. But it moved me in a way that was very important at the time. It made me realize no matter what I looked like, what I did and how I felt and in moving through the world was important. I'm not giving up that message. That's a fundamental piece of who I am. And I absolutely considered that maybe for the first time in a real way, watching a Mel Gibson movie. And I'm not giving that up. Mm-hmm. But I'm not watching any more Mel Gibson movies if I do anything about it.
I have not watched a Mel Gibson movie since it was brought into the sunlight, into the daylight, that he is a hateful, horrible human being. Now, if the people who want to work on his films after that has come out in the daylight want to do that, that's fine. I don't feel sympathy for them to do that. Granted, breaking the entertainment industry is fucking really, really hard. And if someone's chance to get a credit is working on a Mel Gibson movie, I'm not going to fault them for that. But anything he's made since it turned out that he's the person he is, I have not seen a single film of his, and I simply will not.
Yeah.
I'm not giving up Braveheart. I'm simply not giving up Braveheart. Not doing it. I'm not giving up Lethal Weapon. That whole franchise is as cotton candy consumerism as it is a hugely influential part of my friend group growing up.
Mm-hmm.
We watched all the Lethal Weapon movies over and over again. The dialogue was part of our conversations on the regular. I'm not going to give that up and not watch Lethal Weapon simply because one of the co-leads turned out to be a shitty person.
And here's another interesting fact, and then we'll move on to a couple of other conversations, because I just don't want it to be all about Hollywood or all about terrible dudes or whatever, because, we're all on a moral spectrum. So I will say that me personally, I cannot look at a photo of Tom Cruise without thinking of Tom Cruise as the Tom Cruise that he is. And I have found since then, and again, to be very clear, since we're talking about lots of things, Tom Cruise has not done anything illegal. Tom Cruise has not been accused of anything illegal. But Tom Cruise has what I will call opinions he's allowed to have as a multi-millionaire that not everybody gets to have about what matters and who needs, say, psychological therapy or mental health help. And I can never look at Tom Cruise without seeing his terrible, terrible takes on people who are struggling with their mental health. And I don't think I'll ever watch another Tom Cruise movie or rewatch a movie that I may have loved, including Top Gun, I think, for the rest of my life, because I just can't. All right. So moving on, we have, let me just double check the time. All right. We have, we're going to move on to Dua Lipa. Dua Lipa is an English/Albanian singer and songwriter. Her accolades include 7 Brit Awards and 3 Grammy Awards. Time magazine included her in its list of 100 most influential people in the world in 2024. Wow.
And I will say, if you are of the Generation X era, she is on par with Madonna. At this particular point in history of her influence, I don't think she's quite, I'm literally drawing a blank.
Britney Spears?
Britney Spears level, Madonna level, and her songs.
Lady Gaga level?
I would say a shade under Lady Gaga, in my own opinion, as far as influence in the industry. But fucking fantastic songs. A knockout vocalist. Dynamic, great songs. A wonderful performer. And, of course, as it goes in the industry, has all of the looks and the genetic gifts physically to create the entire Mariah Carey-esque package, right? Mm-hmm. She's sensational. But may I go from here? Or do you have?
Of course, go ahead.
It has recently come out on social media that many of her songs, many as 5+ of her songs, are absolutely ripping off hooks, melodies from famous songs from the 90s, 80s, and 70s. It's not just one, it's not just two. It's basically all of her hits are borrowing hooks, melodies, song structures, directly ripping off other artists, some famous, some not famous. And she's embroiled in several lawsuits. And it turns out she's won a couple of them because there's this thing now I've learned called interpolation. So if Chris McWhite out there, for example, in the chat room, makes a song, is a great melody, and his song is about his love for marshmallows, and I take that melody and I change the lyrics over to my love for Brussels sprouts, sing the same song, same melody, lyrics are different, you can now claim interpolation of the song, and you don't have to pay any royalties or any publishing rights back to the song creator. So that's a long-winded way of saying she and her team are rip-off artists who are clearly stealing the work of others and profiting from it enormously.
Yeah.
Here is a creator whose music I think is fantastic, great songs. I can't listen to those anymore. I can't contribute to that.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing because Scott and I have this ongoing conversation where I listen to a lot of music but don't choose a lot of music because I know you hear this all the time, but I'm a person who will listen to any music. And so I often let whoever else is in the car, in the house, whatever, choose the music. And so I know a lot of music, but not necessarily who sings it. And to that end, this is part of that problem because the one thing I know about Dua Lipa is she sampled Rocket Man by Elton John, but she did it with Elton John, who is on the record and also in the video, I think, right? So for
Yes.
me, hearing that, I'm like, well, that's okay because that's an Elton John. He totally collaborated. But just because she did that with Sir Elton John doesn't mean that she actually did that with other artists.
Correct.
Instead of just
Yeah.
swiping that track.
Sir Elton got paid for that.
Right.
And my theory on that is based on Dua Lipa's body of work right now, the number of songs that are embroiled in plagiarism within the context of what she's doing, they did not want to screw with Sir Elton John. Sir Elton John has more money than basically almost all the other musicians tied together, and money means lawyers. And if you can hire the best lawyers, this is not just the American system, this is the Western entertainment system. If you have enough money, you don't get ripped off because everybody knows if I steal from Sir Elton John, they'll bury me in court because he can afford the best and he can pay for months.
But the other part of that is for a person like me who's just like, sure, whatever Scott left on in the van, I'm going to listen to whatever that is. I hear a lot of music. If I decide to learn what something is, which I, in fact, did with Dua Lipa this week, in fact, I was like, oh, I kind of like this song, kind of like this song, kind of like this song. What I know when I looked up that one song is that she did a collaboration with Elton John.
Mm-hmm.
I happened to mention it to Scott this week, and he was like, yeah, I'm not so sure. And I didn't know any of that other stuff. But to somebody like me, it looks like if she collaborated with Elton John, she absolutely collaborated with everyone else, which it turns out she probably does not. And there are, just like with all genres of creation and entertainment, there are so many examples of this. Vanilla Ice clearly lost the Under
big.
Pressure
Mhm.
lawsuit. Robin Thicke lost the Blurred Lines lawsuit. And sometimes it works out. In the chat room, we have a couple of comments that I want to discuss if you are ready.
Sure, go
One
ahead.
is the difference between parody and satire, and songs is a perfect example. Weird Al, absolutely not stealing anything.
Right. Weird Al Yankovic is transformatively modifying the songs. He's taking one piece of art, making another piece of art based on it. And that is in the copyright law. I can do that all day. I can make a parody song of Metallica's one, write my own lyrics, release it. But as far as I know, a parody song, you still have to pay publishing a share of the publishing royalties and a share of the song royalties back to the original artist. The transformative nature of it means they can't sue me so I can't release the song. They can't stop me from releasing the song because I have transformed the work of art from one thing into another. But I'm fairly certain Weird Al still has to pay a hefty share of his music royalties to the original creator of the work because Weird Al wouldn't succeed in selling that song if he wasn't ripping off, if he wasn't making a parody of this other song. That's not the same as Dua Lipa, who is successfully ripping shit off now and not paying the people who originally made it.
Yeah, and I also think he has to license that song. So that's different than having to pay royalties on his creation. He has to license it. And that, I'm sure, over his career has gone from very expensive to very inexpensive because he went from somebody nobody knew to somebody everybody wants to parody their song because if he parodies their song gets more popular. So that is, I think, how the free market works. But yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about these weird, moral, ambiguous cases and some that are not at all ambiguous after we get back from this short break.
Remember, in this short break, we would rather you guys just listen to these commercials because it helps the show. Listen through them, and we'll see you when we get back. Ready?
Not yet.
Oh, I got to bring us back. Where am I? Quick break. Okay, ready? Welcome back to Deep Cuts.
This week, we are discussing separating the art from the artist and how possible that is or isn't.
Okay.
So let's get back to it. So there was another example in the chat room, which was Milli Vanilli. I'm just going to touch on this quickly. I do believe Milli Vanilli absolutely, those were not the people singing those songs. I think this is a much more tragic story than we understood at first. I think they were led to believe, no, we're just going to do this. Don't worry about it. You'll get to sing your own songs. And then once they were famous because of their look, they were like, yeah, you can either be they were like, look, you can either be Milli Vanilli or you can go home, but this is how it is right now. And I think that is a little bit harder I don't have any problem listening to Milli Vanilli, knowing that eventually the real singers got paid and it was such a tragic story. But let us move on.
Okay.
This is going to be a hard one for people who read, but the next person we're going to talk about is Neil Gaiman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Neil Gaiman is best known for his work in the fantasy and horror genres, which has changed those genres completely. He has written many, many books, including American Gods, Sandman, Good Omens, Neverwhere, Coraline, The Graveyard Book, and Stardust. In 2020, I'm going to wait till you finish that.
Sorry.
For Steve. It's okay. Just finish that.
I got a cough. Let me get
That's
this cough
okay.
dropped
You
in.
good?
Steve, help us out here. Those of you at home, just hold tight.
Sorry, I'm just going to reread that because I love my friend Steve and he has to work with it. So we're going to let this go.
So sorry.
That's okay.
Somebody actually asked earlier, does Scott have a throat tickle? I'm like, Scott's got a throat tickle. Okay, ready?
Hang tight.
And
Next, we're going to talk about Neil Gaiman. Gaiman is best known for his work in the fantasy and horror genres, which has changed those genres. He has written many books, including American Gods, Sandman, Good Omens, Neverwhere, Coraline, The Graveyard Book, and Stardust. In 2024, he was accused of sexual assault, and it was revealed he made a $60,000 payment to an accuser back in 2013. Production has been halted on Good Omens Season 3. Now, here is an example of this confusing morality.
Yep.
Again, not a person who has been formally accused of breaking the law, but the things that we are sort of learning about Neil Gaiman and his understanding of what is consensual and his understanding and his partner's understanding of what is consensual, they're totally different. So that might turn out not to be true. But the big thing here is, again, just like the movies that Miramax put out, so much of Gaiman's work is supportive of, I don't know, minor characters, not the main storyline, all the things. He's a supportive
LGBTQ supporter.
He has strong female characters. He has strong gay characters. He has strong underdog characters, all of those things. So I don't know, but I do think that as yet there have been no criminal allegations or criminal filings made against him.
Correct.
And yet I have a very dear friend who loves so much of Neil Gaiman's work, who is actually having to figure out what they will or will not do moving forward, because so much of his work is so seminal in their lives, so important, so tethered to huge experiences in their life, and this one's hard too.
And that again brings up, they stopped production on Good Omens Season 3. So all of those other people, the actors, the techs, the prop people, the costume designers, the assistants, everybody across the board is out of work because this guy's behavior is egregious enough that the production company is like, we're just out. And that is part of what makes this so complicated. You know, what if Neil Gaiman was like, okay, super cool. I understand you guys don't like me, but to keep everybody getting in check, every penny I make from this from here on out goes to this particular charity, this particular cause. Would something like that allow us to be like, great, now all of these fantastic people in the entertainment industry who've done nothing wrong, who did nothing wrong to anyone ever on a successful show because their work helped make the show successful, do they get to have another season of employment and revenue, etc.?
Yeah, and in the chat room, there's some conversation. I am saying sexual harassment that has not yet been criminally or civilly charged is still problematic, not that because it hasn't been involved in a legal criminal indictment or civil case. What I'm saying is it still matters to me to know that the person who creates good things that I love and are very important to my life, I want those to be similar good humans to me. And of course, that defaults that I believe I'm a good human. I believe I haven't done anything wrong, which goes back to the idea of some legacy art. We were talking about Da Vinci earlier, that kind of thing. If that, the mores of the social structure and the mores and what was acceptable in different times absolutely matters. And it sort of depends on my life and my morality if I can tolerate still having these creations in my life if I find out the creator of somebody who I cannot, with my morality, I can't accept or continue to love. And there are so many things that go into it. In the chat rooms, Recluse Mage has also mentioned the type, number, and frequency of violations plays a part. I can move on if you'd like.
Yeah, let's move on.
That.
We have some other topics to cover here before we're done.
So, speaking of frequency and type, Joss Whedon is an American screenwriter, director, producer, comic book writer, and composer. Famous for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Firefly, and Cabin in the Woods. Whedon has been accused of being verbally abusive to coworkers, dating back to his days on Buffy. Numerous people on his sets have described him as being a bully and his behavior on set as being overbearing.
Mm-hmm.
2 coworkers report that he called them fat when they were obviously and publicly pregnant. What's so interesting to me about Joss Whedon is I have many, many friends that I love and respect who absolutely love the things that he created and continue to advocate for the things he created, specifically Buffy and Firefly. And they are, I believe, very good people. The people, my friends, who continue to advocate, the browncoats that I know who continue to advocate for Firefly, and some of my best friends in the world who still love Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And they are able to separate the art from the artist because they knew those before we knew that the artist was a terrible person.
Yeah, that goes back to kind of the original point of this is you're a browncoat, you love Firefly, it speaks to you, it's one of the greatest things you've ever experienced, it helps you find a small part of your own identity, you're in love with it, you're in love with this piece of work that has made your life better, that has enriched you as a person. And then it turns out the guy who created it is not the kind of person that enriches other people's lives, but is a predator, is a jackass asshole, right? That's the general concept. Do you go back and rewrite your emotional involvement with a thing that he was a part of creating? Again, this is different. You can never watch Cosby stand up again because it's just Cosby on the mic. You're never going to go back and watch Firefly again. You're never going to watch Rivertown. You're never going to watch all those wonderful actors who put so much work into this that made it the wonderful thing that it is. I don't have answers for this. I'm so sorry.
Well, I kind of have an answer. Joss Whedon has been publicly reported, I'll say again, I'm not sure that there are any criminal allegations or civil allegations. But it's, I think Steve Rickyberg in the chat room mentions this. He says it's not just that he was verbally abusive, it's that he was supposed to be supportive and feminist and turns out to be very, very not supportive of specifically women that he worked with. This is interesting because he also is retired, which is fine. He's probably in his mid-60s. He's a bajillionaire. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he still will get all the residuals and royalties and all that jazz. So all that's fine. But do I have to give up my enjoyment of the things that I loved that he did because it turns out that those may have been done under duress of some sort? And that's kind of what we're talking about tonight. I personally have never watched Buffy. I'm currently watching it for the very first time because I have several dear friends who love it. And I'll be honest, my problem with that is not that I know that Joss Whedon was kind of a jerk and maybe even more than jerk. it's just, I'm a 50-year-old watching teenagers in high school, and that's not, for me, that's not relevant, and that's the thing that's cringing, that's making me cringe. But it's not at all the reality that I know now. It's the storyline. It's not made for me.
Right, right. Michael Gray says, must live under a rock. I'm hearing a lot of this for the first time. A lot of people are hearing this. You know, they really are hearing this for the first time, because if you don't follow this stuff on social media and you don't follow the trades, you don't hear that someone you think is an amazing creator is a person that you would not hang out with at a bar. Let me go back. I will stop saying these are crappy, shitty, awful people. Let's just say Mel Gibson at a bar saying the things that he said he's been recorded saying that have come out and have caused problems for his career. He says this shit at a bar. I'm not hanging out with that dude at all. Right? That's a big thing right there.
And that's what I keep saying, that these people's moralities, I'm going to have to figure out with my own morality. But my morality, the person I am today, is different than the person I was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And it's important to kind of figure out how and why you're engaging with something and if you can still do that. And I think it's okay for me personally, and I think it's okay in general, to kind of take that information and say, for me personally, I'm no longer a Jets fan. I'm absolutely never watching another Tom Cruise movie, brand new movie, but I am still going to love Roald Dahl's Matilda. I am, even though I know that he probably did worse things than some other people. But that's what I mean. It's difficult. It's difficult to be human.
It is very difficult to be human. It is very difficult also to give up these things that we have found to be icons in our life, that we have found to be compass points in our life. Creative works that were entirely fictitious and made up by somebody else. And yet there's something about that that resonates deep in your heart, and you fall in love with the work.
Yeah. And we are actively not, you guys definitely know examples of creators of things that you love turning out to be terrible people. And this is kind of what we're talking about, but not exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about whether or not you can still engage with the things that you love. So
yes,
we're purposely not talking about big ticket items like J.K. Rowling and things like that, because that is well known and covered in the social media gestalt. I do want to bring up a couple more.
Hit me.
Ellen DeGeneres. If you are a TV watcher.
That's a good one. That's a tough one.
Ellen DeGeneres came out in the late 90s. And when she did, she weathered a storm of prejudice because she came out as a lesbian woman.
Mm-hmm.
She was before that and during that, she was one of comedy's most beloved figures. But by 2020, DeGeneres' reputation seemed as golden as it would ever be. She had a talk show that was very successful for many, many years, and it quickly turned to not perfect, as several ex-employees claim that the talk show personality created a toxic work environment.
Mm-hmm.
Despite her human rights and animal activism and upbeat on-screen personality, DeGeneres was accused of discrimination and harassment. An investigation was launched as more and more people, ranging from former staff members to other celebrities, spoke out. 3 executives of the Ellen DeGeneres show exited, but DeGeneres still continued to host her show until its conclusion in 2022, just shy of its 20th anniversary. While DeGeneres hasn't left the spotlight completely, she has been sort of humbled and brought to the court of public opinion. So, I do want to be very clear. Ellen DeGeneres has not been accused of anything criminal or any civil lawsuits against her.
So this one's more complicated, right? Because entrepreneurial people sometimes push really, really hard to create something where there wasn't something before they were involved. And you find people who have built a business from scratch, not always, not frequently. There are many instances, someone who built a business from scratch did so because they were extraordinarily demanding of themselves and of the people around them. And their success is due to their work ethic, their grind, and their ability to sacrifice their time, their family, everything else with a myopic focus on the end goal, which is to be successful at this particular craft. So here's Ellen, right? Here's Ellen, who got absolutely shit on for coming out in a cause that's very popular among a certain segment of Western culture. She's like, I'm a lesbian. That shouldn't impact the art that I'm making. So on the one hand, people like me are supportive of her because, hell yes, sister, who gives a crap who you want to sleep with? What is the art that you are making? What is the thing you are making? And can we get behind that? And I doubly support you because people hating on you for who you are shouldn't be a part of what you are making as long as everything's legal and there are adults involved and all that other things.
Mm-hmm.
And then we throw our support behind this person. And then what do you know? She's a horrible boss. She is a LinkedIn entrepreneurial go-getter. You're going to work 90 hours for me and you should love doing it every second of the way. And we've all worked for shitty bosses. So now here's the thing that doesn't involve gender, doesn't involve sexual orientation, doesn't involve objectifying other people in a sexual way. She's just a fucking jackass of a boss that treats people crappy.
Mm-hmm.
It's this schism. It's this dichotomy. Like, should I be supporting her because of the trial she's gone through?
Right.
Or should I cut ties with her because she's a fucking piece of shit boss?
Right. And it's a complex, this is what I keep saying. It's a complex thing because we should support her when she's going through, me personally, I think we should support her when she's going through adversities because of the actual person she is, things she cannot change about herself. If she was getting terrible harassment because she has, I don't know, blue eyes or whatever color eyes she has, still unacceptable. That's unacceptable. She didn't choose to be a lesbian. She absolutely chose to put her interns and her assistants through that fucking haunted house debacle.
Oh my God, the haunted house shit. Yeah.
And every time, and I'm a person who startles super easily. We've talked about it 1,000 times on the show. We live in a less than 1,000 square foot place, and Scott legitimately just shouts out where he is in the house because I startle so easily, and I will scream right in his face, and nobody wants that, right? But I'm not planning that. So every time I saw her send her very, very, very easily startled and very frightened assistant through a haunted house at Halloween, I was like, this is absolutely criminal behavior. Like, I would literally quit. And I've had these conversations, like, you wouldn't quit your job if she's just asking you to do that. It's a job in Hollywood, and he's trying to scale the heights in Hollywood. It's like, yeah, but he shouldn't have to risk his health and his mental health and his pants for peeing because his boss is asking him to do a terrible thing. That's terrible behavior. And it turns out that's terrible behavior.
Cobalt in the chat room says, exactly, that is insane. Race and sexuality are irrelevant to Ellen DeGeneres being the kind of boss that you would just fucking never want to work for, right? It's very interesting.
100,000%. But this is the point that we're sort of talking about tonight. There are things that she got canceled for, I'll use the word canceled for, that are completely irrelevant and she cannot change. And then rightfully so, she shouldn't have been protected from being a terrible human being as a boss because she went through that adversity. But that's what being human is about. Like, we all, everybody who hears my voice right now, including me, will have moments where we'll do a thing or think a thing that we didn't necessarily think we'd ever think. Like, I have always hated Ellen DeGeneres because she sent her assistants through a haunted house and I couldn't handle that. So, but I hated that I hate that anybody has to come out. I didn't have to come out. Well, why does anybody out? You know, that is problematic for me. But does she deserve to get canceled? Yes. For being a terrible boss. So I do have one more. We're kind of ending.
Let me jump in. Here. Get ready for your next one. Sorry, guys. We had a good one in the chat room from Recluse Mage, actor Robert Blake. Robert Blake actually murdered a human being, right? That is a 3 or 4 strata above the Ellen DeGeneres situation. So if somebody's actually taken a human life, like, it's so deep. But again, all the people who make the Robert Blake stuff is very complicated.
Yeah, and I think Phil Spector, music producer Phil Spector, is a similar case. Literally thought, I'm famous and I can get away with anything. That is not how that works. The last celebrity we will talk about is Roseanne Barr.
Oh, good God. Yeah, that's a good one.
As the title star of a hugely successful sitcom running from the late 80s to the late 90s, Roseanne Barr was seen as many as the voice of a generation, specifically the voice of the working or low middle class. Her character was one that the whole family could get behind. And when Roseanne was rebooted in 2018, she looked set to capture an entirely new audience. However, she made a terribly shitheel tweet and lost absolutely all of that. And I could not be happy. Do you see this, Matt? I could not be happier. Not going to tell you what she tweeted. I'm sure you can figure that out. But my favorite part of this is in 2018, she tweeted something unforgivable. And the reboot went on without her. To our point of there's a whole production there. There's a whole crew. There's a whole cast. There's script writers. There's everyone. And she could have taken everyone down with her in 2018. It would totally have been just normal state of the state for Hollywood to see, okay, Roseanne is canceled. All of you people go home, get another job. But what they did was pivot, rename it The Connors, fire her for her public shittiness, and continue on so that all of that cast, all of those crew, all of those writers did not also suddenly lose their job
That's really
for one human being fucking up.
Yep.
I will say, despite attempts to apologize, Barr did not regain her following or reputation, and turns out that's because those apologies turned out not to have been
easy
real.
To see that all of those apologies were disingenuous, and she was trying to recapture her title belt. And she didn't mean any of those apologies whatsoever.
Yeah.
As opposed to switching back into sports, we'll talk about this another time probably too. Michael Vick, a famous NFL quarterback who got into big trouble for dogfighting, when that gentleman is apologizing for what he's done, there's a body of work backing up his apology. Convicted by a jury of his peers, sentenced, served his sentence, and has been working quite a long time to try and rehabilitate his reputation, say like, man, I was young, I screwed up, I'm so sorry, I'm ready to move on. I know what I did was wrong. There are people out there who do a crime or do a thing, and they say later on, like, what I did was wrong. I accept responsibility for my actions. I should not have done that. I did that. I deserve the punishment I received, and now I would like to grow as a human and move forward. Roseanne Barr is not one of those people. Any apology she has made is clearly just like, I need to do this so I keep getting a fat check, right? Yeah, and that's not the same thing.
But in the chat room, we have several people saying the rebooted Roseanne sitcom that became The Connors, people really liked. And Roseanne, the original sitcom, and also The Connors showed a slice of real American life. And was it necessarily my life? No. Were there pieces of that life that I could always engage with? Yes. The same potholders, the same, Wednesday night meals, all the things that made me feel like the same. I was those people, and I think my dad and I, when I was young, used to watch The Honeymooners because that felt like home to him. That felt like what he grew up with a little bit. But The Honeymooners, if you're not familiar, Jackie Gleason starred in The Honeymooners, and he was not a main character that would be fully embraced today. But I also don't think that Jackie Gleason's character on The Honeymooners was a terrible, terrible human being for his time. Would he get a little backlash today? I don't know, but he was fictional, thankfully. Mm-hmm. So we don't have to find that out.
One thing about Roseanne, which was mentioned in the chat room, is that was particularly frustrating and upsetting to me because the whole concept of the Midwestern domestic goddess, she broke ground in stand-up comedy and made her bones in stand-up, which is a brutal industry. It is just brutal. It's even harder than what I do, which is writing books, which itself is brutal. And she found an angle in stand-up comedy that nobody had ever done before. And it was very Midwestern, very blue collar, very like, I will not apologize for the fact that I am a quote unquote domestic goddess. And she did shit that was fantastic and uplifted a lot of people who were just generally shit on by the entertainment industry. And all you wanted to do was root for Roseanne Barr to succeed. And then she turned out to be who she was.
And for me, that was a sitcom that starred a non-traditionally beautiful main female character.
Okay.
And to decode that for everybody else, Roseanne Barr was fat when she was
Yes.
on that show, and I
Yes.
was fat when she was on that show. And having someone so beloved back in the day, who absolutely did not fit the standard of beauty of the day, but still be beloved and funny and engaging and allowed in all those spaces, was very powerful for me. I've never been skinny a day in my life, and that was very powerful for me. That, for me, does not forgive the human being that she is today. So I think, to kind of bring it back around, since we're kind of done with this conversation for now, I'll say I don't think I would necessarily turn off an early Roseanne episode if I saw it in reruns on the TV, but I don't think I would ever purposefully engage with Roseanne Barr as a political or personal or famous person today. I don't think anything she does from here on out, but I love that that family was a family that looked a lot like a normal American
weird,
family.
Strange. It wasn't like loving husband, wife, 2.5 children. There was so much in the original Roseanne sitcom that was absolutely supportive, uplifting, and fantastic.
Well, and as that sitcom was live on TV, we had one of her daughters, the actor who played one of her daughters, was publicly a lesbian, and that did not get her kicked off the show. There was several incidences where her the character Roseanne's sister, was in an abusive relationship, and the husband, who was played by John Goodman, Roseanne's husband, played by John Goodman, legitimately was. There's a very famous scene where Roseanne, the character's sister, comes over and has had a domestic violence incident with her partner, and Roseanne's husband walks out and comes back later with broken knuckles and all that, and not necessarily any of that is okay. But back in the day, that there was somebody willing to protect their family and do the right thing, that resonated with me back then. Right now, I would hope he would, not also risk his own livelihood and life. But, there we go.
Yeah.
But our point, I think, in talking about this, so that we will next talk about fictional characters who do things that we may or may not engage with, is to say that I think your morality as a human being does not mean you can't experience or engage with terrible characters or terrible or great characters from terrible people. But I do think it's a never-ending conversation with yourself as you continue to grow.
It's a metaphorical slinky. It goes up, it goes down. It's not a straight line. It's not a linear thing which crosses a particular threshold where you can make a decision. It's not binary. Not in the gender sense, in the decision-making sense. It's not yes or no. There's yes, there's no, black and white on these ends, and then this huge gradation of gray within it, in which makes the topic we're talking about extremely difficult. And as far as the next episode goes, I'll give you guys a hint how difficult it is for me as a creator, I'm sure for other creators as well, to make a compelling story in the fashion in which I tell a story. I need horrible people to do horrible things. I also need people who don't think they're horrible to do horrible things from the perspective of people who are opposed to them, and not understand the horrible thing character A is doing is a good thing to character A, but is horrible to character B. And a lot of times, you guys, it gets super yucky, super squicky to try and put myself in the head of a person who's doing awful shit, because that person is the hero of their own story. And I will never do a simple black and white caricature. I'm not going to have a bad guy thinking he or she is bad. The bad guy thinks they're doing the right thing. It's yucky as a creator to put your head in those spaces.
So we are...
What the hell happened?
I don't know.
There you
There
go.
we go. Oh,
So we are.
I don't think we're there. Can you hear me?
What the hell happened? Hold on, guys. Give us a second.
We're wriggling the cord.
Yeah, you're just chopped right out. Hold on. Let me go
Yeah.
back to here. That sucks. We were rocking and rolling too.
There it is.
Nope. Talk.
Test 1 2. Test 1 2.
Talk 1 2.
Test
Okay.
1 2.
Well, here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna close the show out by yourself on my microphone because I have no idea what the fuck just happened. Ready?
Sure.
So change chairs. You're gonna do the whole close all by yourself. Okay?
Yeah. Can you just point it towards me?
No, it doesn't work. It doesn't really work that way. You do the whole close solo and rock and roll. Put on my headphones. Great show, baby. Good job.
So to finish off, we are going to talk next week about characters and creators. And in the chat room just now, we have mention of All in the Family, and that's going to factor in very big next week, along with characters like Farm Girl who do terrible things and the creator who has to justify why those exist. Those creations exist in their fiction, in their creations. And until then, hang on, I got to get the script because now I got to do it by myself.
Never mind. Go ahead, babe. It's all you.
There's a lot of static.
I know.
Give me
I
just
don't
a
think
second.
That's recording, but go ahead.
Okay. So that's it for this episode of Deep Cuts. On the next episode, we'll talk reconciling character choices with the author's decisions as suggested by our friend Sean Dyer. Until then, I hope you guys have a great new year. We wish you a very, very happy new year. We hope you and yours get everything you need and want in 2025 and moving forward. And we will talk to you all who smell a lot like flowers real soon.
Goodbye. Okay, switch seats again.
You guys are the best.
There's a great comment in the chat room I want to address. Yes, A sounds a lot different in the mic because in the broadcast industry, mics and the sounds they make and the controls are tailored to the voice of the artist. I am a lot louder than A on a mic. I would say in the house hanging out, we're basically the same level of loud.
And sometimes I'm real loud.
And sometimes A's louder than I am. But on a mic, I have different projection and different EQ resonance, probably more lows, more mid bass than A has. So my mic set to my settings, A's is cranked up quite a bit because she doesn't have the same volume projection. That's why it sounded different, but there we go to answer your question. Come over here.
What's your voice? What are you, a tenor?
I am a male tenor. Male, pretty much a stock male tenor.
Yeah,
when I sing, I go from a G3, which isn't very strong, up to a C5, which is pretty strong, and then D, E, F, occasionally an F5. So I'm up there in the male tenor range. What is yours?
I am probably an alto, maybe a mezzo soprano sometimes, but mostly an alto.
A little louder.
Mostly an alto.
There you go. See, that's the difference. You can hear the difference. I'm a good 2 inches, 3 inches away from the mic. It's solid signal. A literally is on top of the mic, and it's hard to hear her. That's why her microphone is configured differently than mine. But Happy New Year to all you fucking crazy motherfuckers out there. We're so delighted you spend your time with us. Come back for the next episode. It's going to be Slay Season 3, Episode 2. Linc's got to go visit Callista. And it's the visit to Callista that is setting up the entire fucking season. Rob and I are so excited. And then Anne are going to have a great conversation with you after. You're all fantastic. We're going to tap out because our gear is failing us a little bit. Goodbye. Goodbye. Over here. Goodbye. We're going to try it here. And love you. Bye.